Self-development, massive part of my healing journey. I feel like emotionally I was still a child. There's something inherently dangerous about like the violence and strength of men that are not emotionally developed. I did a lot of damage around me as someone who was hurt, and just wanted love. So doing the self development is not only a way for me to live a better life, but if I truly desire to make impact, then I have to do that work.
2, 1, 0.
Hi, and welcome to Stellar Alive Podcast. This is your host, Orion. Thank you so much for being here. Today I have with me Shawn Wells. He is a world-leading nutritional biochemist and expert on health optimization. He has formulated over 1,000 supplements, food, beverages, and cosmeceutical, and patented 25 ingredients. He is now known as the ingrediologist, the scientist of ingredients. With over a decade of clinical experience, he has consulted thousands of people on innovative health solutions such as keto, paleo, fasting, and supplements. He has also personally overcome various health issues, including Epstein-Barr Virus, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, depression, insomnia, obesity, and pituitary tumor. In this episode, we talked about his childhood trauma and how childhood trauma can deeply impact us, but with self-work, we can overcome it and transform. He shared how our inner critic stems from our childhood and childhood beliefs, and we can turn this inner critic into our champion. We also shared about psychedelics like psilocybin and how can they be catalysts for one's transformation and shift, how to deal with chronic fatigue, how masculinity in this highest form is about channeling strength to protect, not project, and more and more. Shawn is a wonderful person. It was a very heartfelt conversation, and I really enjoyed it. And if you are enjoying this show or are about to enjoy this coming episode, please share this with me. You can go to stellaralifepodcast.com. You can send me a personal note. I would love to hear with you. You can also go and give me a 5-star review if you want. That would be lovely. My team and I would really appreciate it. There's a lot of love and effort that is going into this podcast and into bringing you this amazing guest. And this is your way to give back. If you're enjoying the show, also share it with your friends. Share the light, because it's good to make someone's day better, right? This is why I do this. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Shawn, and welcome to the podcast. It is a pleasure having you here.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to do this with you.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Before we begin, can you please share with us your incredible origin story that made you the fantastic scientist that you are today?
Well, it is. I love the origin story framing. That does feel like I am a superhero, but I think we all have our hero's journey, especially in this space of like health and wellness. There's a lot of wounded healers, right? And that's very much the case for me too. Like that, I came from a lot of wounding. My childhood was very chaotic. It was filled with abuse and bullying. I got into overeating, and it wasn't long that I was at 300 pounds. The bullying was very intense at that point, and even from teachers, not just students. I was certainly never one to get the girl, and the amount of rejection was pretty intense. And being the butt of jokes quite often was harsh. And then all the things that were going on at home too. My My brothers both ran away at a younger age, and there was just a lot going on for me. And it got to a point where I loathed myself so much and hated my body so much and gaslit myself so much that I got suicidal and anorexic, and I pretty much stopped eating, and I went from 300 pounds to 150 pounds at 6'3". And I looked emaciated. I remember jumping on the scale every time I peed to see if I weighed just a little less. And at no point did I love myself. And even after that, I got orthorexic, where I was working out 4 hours a day and eating, protein and all these different things, like just obsessed with supplements, which is where my interest in supplements did come in, most certainly. But I was reading all the magazines and I was working out constantly and thinking I was going catabolic if I didn't have protein immediately after my workout. And I needed 6 small meals a day, and that was an obsession as well. And so I got up to about 225 pounds and a six pack, still hated myself. And then I was relentless on this hate and working hard and trying to prove myself. I was battling imposter syndrome massively. It was a brutal path, like where I just was fighting depression every step of the way. And then finally, I did crash. I spent about 6 months in bed with Epstein-Barr, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, Hashimoto's, and I just couldn't get out of bed. And that's when I discovered like paleo, keto, fasting. This is over 20 years ago. And luckily, those things helped me work my way out of bed. And I started taking a lot of supplements around immune health. That was amazing. And I still worked most of my life up until about 3.5 years ago, hating myself, really. Like, just really like thinking that love is fleeting, that I had to achieve to earn love, that I didn't deserve love. And I think this is true of many driven entrepreneurs that come from a place of wounding, like I do. And especially when you're in like a hyper masculinized like world of just drive and achievement and money and these kinds of things. Those are the metrics you as a man in particular are judged by, right? Like, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? It wasn't until I did my first psychedelic journey on mushrooms, and I was expecting this journey to be a way that I could get more performance so I could work even harder. I was always finding ways that I could work not 60, not 80, how about 100? Can I avoid sleep altogether? Like, this was my drive, this was my passion, and people like the Gary V's of the world fed into all that. The hustle and grind, get up and grind. Like, grind means suffering, grind means smoke and heat and pieces breaking off and your body breaking down, and you're just sacrificing for the someday that may never come. And that doesn't sound like a healthy recipe. But anyway, in my journey, this psilocybin journey, I didn't tell anyone who I was. And usually when I walked into rooms, I was so insecure that like I had to tell people why I'm valuable. I would give my whole resume of like, I've formulated all these supplements, I've patented all these ingredients, I'm a dietitian, I'm a biochemist, I'm really important, you should know me. I didn't tell anyone that day who I was. I was just kind of laid back. And I was laying on this mattress or pile of blankets, just laying there and deep in this journey. But people were surrounding me, doing a cuddle puddle with me, caressing me. And I'm someone who never really got much touch. And it was so beautiful. And I kept looking at all these people like, why are they here for me? Like, and I felt like I was guilty, like that I was somehow like burdening them. And then I like kept going deeper where it was just in the medicine where it was just like, no, they're here because they love me. They love who I am, not what I achieve or what I can do. You can tell someone those things, but until you feel it and anchor it in your heart, it's not real. Like, I could rationalize what you're saying if you told me that. Like, yeah, that makes sense. But until you felt it, that was the point when I knew like I could have love. I could really have love, and it wouldn't be some escaping, fleeting, conditional love. That I needed to go on a journey from here forward on kind of being in that feminine, healing, nurturing energy to resolve a lot of these woundings of my childhood. There's no way I could be in my true king energy where I can truly protect and provide, where I can truly create a safe container for the feminine to play and dance and heal, and whether that's inside of me or with women or those that are in the feminine around me until I heal. Otherwise, I'm just going to be projecting that pain and hurt on others. And I'm going to, and to that point, as I was growing in my career, I was not intentionally, but manipulating women, manipulating people, using my knowledge, ability, and skills and desire to be loved. But then the hurt would come through. And at some point, it became manipulative. And, I own that. And it wasn't really until I started down that path about 3.5 years ago that I started really doing a lot of this work. That's a danger with a lot of healers that those wounds stay present. We all have our purpose in trying to help others with similar wounds, but we have to make sure we continue to do the work on ourselves. So the hero's journey isn't over. It never is. I continue to do the work, but I also enjoy now more than ever the play.
Mm. Wow, I so appreciate you diving in so deep right away and being so open and raw. This is just it's it's a pleasure to watch. I'm so proud of you. That's so I'm just like, wow, I'm really proud of him. With everything that you came from and everything that you are today, it's this is incredible. Because a lot of time I come across men that are very successful and everything's perfect, and to the outside world it's just like, I'm perfect and there is nothing bad, and it's like a mask. It's almost like dealing with, yeah, with a facade. And so it's so refreshing and also so surprising because I look at the man that you are today, and I look at this like beautiful handsome man that is in front of me that is mega successful, and I would never ever imagine that you went through so much horror as a child. So you think the psilocybin was the one that changed everything for you?
I think I was doing a lot of work to lead to that point. Like sometimes these things, you think like it's just some pivotal random thing, but even leading to that point, I was knee deep in biohacking, but I had just went on a trip with one of my fellow biohackers who I love, Dr. Kayla Osterhoff, and we went on a trip to Iceland, and we took a bunch of like other biohackers on this trip, and we did foraging and breath work and Wim Hof and all this cool stuff. And I feel like that was an experience. When I did Wim Hof, I experienced some things that were incredible. I did holotropic breath work there and experienced some things that were incredible. We did like this blindfolded, headphoned kind of dancing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was like really amazing too. That was combined with breath work, and we were doing foraging, and I happened to break my phone right at the beginning of that trip, and it was the best thing ever. Obviously, it feels scary and a nightmare, but like I digitally detoxed. And I ended up getting super close with everyone there, close with nature, and really experiencing some things that I think were shifting now in my soul. While I thought that maybe this psilocybin thing, I was telling myself on a superficial level, it'll help your productivity because Dave Asprey and Ben Greenfield and Tim Ferriss and all these people are doing it. It'll give you an edge. But I think deep down, I knew I was on the edge of actually suicide if I kept on this path. I think something had to change, and I was reaching for a lifeline, and it was that.
And do you love yourself today?
Oh, yeah, very much.
What is self-love to you?
I think of, speaking of kind of like the masculine and feminine energies, like I now think of like my childhood self that maybe didn't get to experience childhood in an ideal way, like Shawnee. I get to protect Shawnee, and like this is like the warrior king, that is strong and protects and provides. Proud of that, and there's a love there that's a whole love that feels good with me just being me and not being incomplete, needing someone else. Also, Shawnee, which I would put kind of more in the feminine energy, the playful energy, like looks out for Shawn Wells, the biochemist, and like in the masculinized world and of achievement and all the things. Like Shawnee is sometimes like, hey, you need to play, you need to chill. It's time to get some self care. So I think love for me is Shawn Wells loving Shawnee and Shawnee loving Shawn Wells. When I went through like a hypnotism session with Elliot Rose, who works with like some of the most elite people in the world, like all these pro poker players and all this stuff, and he took me through a session, and he regressed me back to a moment in my childhood when it was a very uncomfortable moment. I'll just say, and I was crying, and he said, can you kneel down and give Shawnee a hug? And I was like sobbing, like now, like in real life, I was just sobbing, kind of going through this, like holding childhood Sean that was, and and then he asked me, he's like, "What does Shawnee think about you?" And that was the first time in my life that I gave myself that I'm proud of myself.
Oh,
As I was like,
fudge.
he's 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 blown away. Like all the stuff, like all like I've been to like 60 countries. I have a best-selling book. I like done all these things. Like I've patented 25 ingredients. I've formulated 1,000 supplements, and like I say those again, like I say those things like a resume, like on podcasts or other things, and it just feels like numb inside. But like in that moment, like when little Shawnee was looking up at me, like, when you're hoping someday to be like a fireman or a policeman or, and those are amazing jobs. But I was just like, holy crap. Like you exceeded everything like I could have ever dreamed of. Like I remember when I was a kid, like my dream was to just go to Florida on a vacation or something, and it's like now I'm like all over the world. It's like, wow.
Well, if you ever in Florida, come visit us.
Well, I would love that. I would love that. I love Florida. And likewise, if you're ever in Texas, come visit me. So, not that Texas is a small place, but
I feel like Texas is becoming a hub to so many incredible people. It's very interesting.
yeah, that's just a beautiful moment that I was gifted from Elliot, where I think up until that point, I was always like looking for essentially my father's approval in everyone. I think like whenever I worked like I outworked everyone by 10x, like everywhere I've ever worked, because I always wanted to hear like, attaboy, good job, you crushed it. And I would do so to the detriment of my health. Like, I worked in healthcare for 10 years, and I would be there at 3 in the morning. I would be there on the weekends. I would show up for everything and anything. I was working all the holidays. If there was snow, if there was, I was just there. I was a machine. And now I realize where a lot of that comes from. And again, and I don't look down on my past either. Like I'm very proud of all that kind of maybe pain, empathy, drive, grind, what it all got me. It all got me here. So that's wonderful. And I've learned my lessons, and I'm trying to live now with more balance and bring in that self love.
Yes, I love it. I'm all about self-love. It's a part of my journey and part of my teaching, and I do hypnotherapy myself. Um, and I do a lot of hypnotherapy sessions for myself. And it's like an onion. You peel one layer and there's more and there is more and there is more. Like you said, it's a never-ending journey, but it's getting just better and better and more beautiful. And it's almost like coming back to who I am, who I really am, plus some every time I do that. I teach self-love, and it's something that I'm learning myself every day when I wake up. Because there are some old programs that sometimes come up, and the small voice that is like trying to drag you down. Um, and I guess with our neural pathways, you have to keep doing the same thing so it will stay the same, so it will not change, because every time you make a change, like every time I make a recording for someone, I recommend listening to it for at least 21 days, so you cement the change in your neurology. um, because it's not like a one and done. You don't just do one journey. You don't just take one psychedelic or one ceremony. It's an everyday thing. It's like going to the gym every day. It's like brushing your teeth every day. Um, you gotta work that muscle, right?
100%. With journeys, I think people think that the journey is the experience and the change. There is often epiphany that happens in there, where your ego is suppressed, where your default mode network is turned off potentially, and you're left with kind of an absolute truth that's not a reframed truth. Um, and that's a beautiful thing when you can experience your truth and you're in a neuroplastic state where you can accept those things. And what really matters is the coming weeks and months and years with what you do with that information. If you have your epiphany and you see what's really happening in your life and you see where some of these counterproductive behaviors and actions are taking place, and then you just go back to living your normal life, this is worse than when you came in, to me, because it's no longer suppressed and hidden. It's in plain sight, but here you are acting your way through, lying your way through your day to day life. Then that's no good. Like, I mean, you really need to have the integration work, and importantly, integrate shadow and light, as they're both truly a part of who we are, and see the beauty in both and recognize and acknowledge both. And but most certainly integration is the key piece of all of this deeper work, without a doubt. And another thing that you mentioned is this kind of idea of like the inner critic versus the inner champion. What is that voice inside you right now? Because for me, a long time, it was brutal. It was gaslighting. It was you're never going to be good enough. It was always, it figures, that's how it is. You suck. All this kind of stuff. And if anyone talked to us like we talk to us, they wouldn't be our friend, right? Like, so we need to change that voice to the inner champion. And that's kind of the NLP side of things that you're talking about, like with hypnotism and, self hypnotism essentially. And pre-framing and reframing is changing that voice to like, yeah, there was a reason for this. The universe is always conspiring on my behalf, not working against me, conspiring on my behalf. There was a lesson here. What was the lesson? Like, this is so exciting. There's a new opportunity today. Because I believe that you're in the right place, right time, all the time. We're just too heads down to notice it. We're too distracted to notice it. That right person that you could have met in line at Starbucks was there, but you were too distracted.
Right. I run a group of women that are well, it's just like a side thing where when my mom, I'm from Israel, and when my mom came to visit, she didn't speak much English, so I created a group for women that are like 60 plus. Um, and now it's like it's starting to grow and grow and grow. We had a meeting, and there was this one lady there, and she said something quite disrespectful, and something about my age, and I don't know, like, just it just felt like she was minimizing me, and at that moment I didn't say anything. I just let it go. It really bothered me. And I always do that. I look back and I'm like, what's the gift? What's the gift? Why why is she there? So A, she's a mirror for me. Like, where do I not respect myself? That, like, everybody that does something to you, they're mirrors. It's either mirroring your shadow side, that, like, parts of you that you don't want to look at, or like some qualities that are in you that you better work on. Like, if somebody disrespect me, then where do I disrespect myself, and where do I disrespect others? And that's the work. And like you said, it's all perfectly magically orchestrated by God, the Creator, um, for our highest and best good. And so I had to look at that. And the other gift is, like, if I'm succeeding in this group of extremely awesome yet extremely opinionated elderly Israeli women, I can succeed in any group. So what a gift, right?
That's awesome. That's so good. Absolutely. I've noticed, like, in journeys too, like where I'm triggered because someone's laughing too much or screaming or distracting me, and, like, I realize that that has nothing to do with that person. This has everything to do with me. And it's like, now, if you, speaking of layers of the onion, you have to sit there and say, why is this triggering me? Where is that coming from? And it's like, oh, it came from, like, your childhood when this and this and this happened. So, yeah, that's where doing the work comes in. And I think a lot of times we're just way too distracted. We don't want to look inwards. There's literally like a fear of, like, let's say, getting into like a sensory deprivation tank and just being in your own thoughts for an hour. Like, people are fearful of that. They get bored, which also can mean they're scared. They want to just have distractions of cell phones and TVs and tablets and laptops and, things to do, work to do. Like, we'll make work to do. I'm going to start cleaning. I'm going to, like, it's like, I don't want to look inwards. I don't want to do the breath work, the meditation, the prayer, and really sit in it, be with myself. Like, even in journeys, I see people that are, like, scared to be by themselves. Like, they want to just kind of be playful, and all that's great. Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but at some point you have to do some deep inner work, and you're going to have to look at the shadow.
Yes. And here I am thinking that I'm going to talk to you about supplements, but we got into this really fun conversation, and it's like, okay, let's go back to Epstein-Barr and how you. Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Honestly, like, one of my last questions was about mind-body connection, but obviously you totally believe in it. But was the self-development part of your healing and recovery as well?
The supplements.
The supplements and the self-development.
Oh, supplements, self development. Okay, self development, massive part of my healing journey. I feel like emotionally I was still a child, and there's something inherently dangerous about, like, the violence and strength of men that are not emotionally developed. I did a lot of damage around me as someone who was hurt, and just wanted love. So doing the self development is not only a way for me to live a better life, but if I truly desire to make impact, then I have to do that work. I'm always projecting out. And there's always a trigger, there's always a lesson, there's always a thing that you need to stop and pause and say, why is this under my skin so much? And it's always because it's a reflection of you. And, having the patience with yourself to recognize those things and certainly do the work is truly important.
Yes. Supplement wise, how did you recover? Like what you said, you discovered keto and paleo. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I really I found that I was in a state of insufficient cellular energy, which is very common. This broad term is ICE, is the acronym. In the brain, it's the same idea called brain energy gap, where there's a shortfall of mitochondrial energy, ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And in time, that's going to lead to a number of disease states or your body shutting down, things like hypertonic muscles that just stay tight, things like chronic fatigue syndrome, because again, there's a shortfall of energy from what's needed. These kinds of things, fibromyalgia, like kind of inflammation around the muscles, like that shortfall leads to inflammation, glycation, oxidation, damage, and down a path of disease. So I was looking at, I believe I was insulin resistant essentially to some degree, and doing keto allowed me to elevate my ketones and bring that energy back in. And it felt like someone was turning the lights back on from this crushing disease state essentially I was in with autoimmunity.
And what is exactly keto? Does that mean just like high protein, high fat, and like no sugars, no carbs? How does it work?
Yeah, it's moderate protein, high fats, and low to no carbs. So it's essentially switching you from being a sugar burner, glucose burner, to being a ketone burner, which using fat as that fuel. And fasting will augment that. Fasting, you get into a ketotic state as well. That was a powerful tool too, and they work very well together. And then paleo, from the aspect of a lot of the foods that I was eating were potential inflammatory triggers. Now, when you're already in this insufficient cellular energy state, when you're already in autoimmune flare ups, there's a lot more foods that are going to be triggers
Like what?
because you're already inflamed. You already have a leaky gut, a leaky brain. Like you already have a lot of these things going on that your body's not in a state that it can heal itself. On a deeper level, though, to kind of wind this back, I spent my entire life in sympathetic nervous system state, which is fight, flight, or freeze. And I was ultra vigilant, hyper vigilant.
I'm still hyper vigilant because I feel like I also had like a very difficult childhood and some difficult experiences in my life, and I am very hyper vigilant. But it really was awesome when I studied martial arts. I was really like quick.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, I mean, it does help, but yeah, yeah, it's hard for me to relax sometimes.
Very much. I spent almost my whole life not knowing how to do that to get into parasympathetic. And that led to the lack of ATP. Essentially, my brain is always working. My body is always working. It's always on alert. It's always hypervigilant. So it's like it doesn't know how to relax and repair.
It's almost like I relax when I sit in meditation. Oh, now it's meditation. Let me go. Like I've done it so many times, I can go deep really quickly. But I don't think it doesn't translate to my everyday life where um, I'm not that calm all day long. Even though I meditate, even though I do brain tap, even though I do hypnosis, and still like during the day, still I have a little bit of this hypervigilant thing going on.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I mean, it starts from a place of self awareness, right? So you're aware of it, which is incredible. Most people are not aware of, like, the things that I've told you up until this point. I mean, these are things that are very vulnerable, but there's a lot of self-awareness happening, and that is a result of the work, right?
And they're also gifts. Like I wouldn't be the woman that I am. You would not have been the man that you are today, sitting here sharing all this incredible information and being this like beautiful from the inside out person if you didn't go through what you went through when you were a child.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe even another crazier step. I don't know if you've ever watched the short story The Egg on YouTube.
Ah, I heard of it.
Okay, I would encourage like anyone listening to watch it. It may trigger, but then again, ask yourself why if it's triggering you, because it may challenge some religious constructs. But after a lot of work in 5-MeO DMT and some of these spirit molecules, I've had discussions, deeper discussions with God, and I've found that movie, that 8-minute movie, is pretty profound, and I find it to be very close to what I'm experiencing. In that, I won't ruin the movie, but I'll just say that I feel like we choose this life. So there's no one to blame. You can't say that, like, oh, this life sucks and I got screwed over. And even if you're handicapped, even if you were, this is going to be hard to hear, even if you were abused, even if you were maybe even raped. And I know that's triggering to hear, but please watch this 8-minute movie and think about that we are meant to experience the things on this earth in this life as lessons to understand humanity and God on a deeper level. So that may be controversial, but I would just encourage anyone listening to watch that.
Yeah, I have a 4-year old. He's almost 4. He's gonna be 4 soon, and we love to read to him the little soul and the sun. Do you know that book?
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, so it's about the soul's journey and how some souls choose to be the villain in this world, so we can learn we can have an experience and then experience ourselves as gratitude or forgiveness or self love or whatever it is, and it's all perfect. Like so a part of me feels like we choose everything, and another part feels like I live in the Truman Show and there is some kind of I don't know, some script that is being written for me when it comes to synchronicities and a lot of things.
I think that's like the beautiful tapestry, right? Where it's like we're all projecting on each other. You know what I mean? That like um that we can at some points like we're learning our lessons, but then at other points we're the NPC non-player character for someone else to learn their lessons.
Yes, so you're like Dolores Cannon as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh man, there's what I'm sure about is that there are a lot of things that I don't even know I don't know. I'm open to everything. So how often do you do psychedelics, and do you do it in a ceremony, or how can one use that to improve their life, get aha moments, or get some healing?
I have been doing it, when I first started, I was actually doing it about once a month because I was just going deep and exploring like a whole new side of myself and self-discovery. But I would not say that's like a cadence that you would want to keep up for the rest of your life. But also, part of me as a biochemist, as a biohacker, as a dietitian, as someone who is an intelligent, scientific person that wants to make impact and help people live their best lives. Like I was also exploring to understand it better, to do a number of these different medicines in a number of different scenarios, often that were triggering for me.
By yourself?
Sometimes, well, with a sitter, like with a sitter or facilitator, like, but certainly, it would be just me on some journeys, and then some journeys it was in groups as big as 25 people or more. So, There was a lot of exploration, a lot of different medicines that I used, and I wanted to know the differences. And they're all profound in their own way. I think psilocybin is a great place to start. It's a very playful, creative, I would say more feminine energy.
And you start with microdosing or you start with a full dose?
I think if the idea of a full dose like is somehow scary to you, then yeah, probably microdosing. But I liked just going right into it. But I was really with amazing facilitators, so that were just incredible.
Yeah, I think it's very important to emphasize the environment you're in, and being with around people you trust in case something happens. And even when you go to a facilitator, like check their background because there are many snake oils out there that will call themselves shamans or whatever they call themselves. So you have to really go with someone you trust and is recommended.
This is one of the most critical things, and I would absolutely underscore that what you just said, that there are people that are going to call themselves shamans or gurus, and that is not good. You don't want someone that is stealing your sovereignty, that is telling you that they're more right than you, that are more brilliant than you, that know the answers, that are going to tell you those answers and give you what their lessons are in life. A good facilitator is going to be someone that's like asking questions and helping keep you safe, and having you guide yourself. You teach yourself. Super, super important. So if you get people that are manipulative, that are gurus, that are shamans, that are the experts, that's not what this space is all about.
No, and it can take away from you energetically. It can be you can get an opposite outcome to what you were hoping to get.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to feel safe. And like, let's say if you are a woman, for example, that has been through, rape or molestation or whatever, um, and that's something that you want to explore, there may be a male facilitator that's great, that a ton of your friends have had great experiences with, but just the whole idea of a man being in that space with you doesn't resonate with you. Listen to that. So, find a female facilitator that like does, and maybe a journey down the road you'll feel good with this guy that everyone else likes. But right now that's not for you. Like, it doesn't feel safe. So listen to yourself. That's part of sovereignty, is listening to yourself and not overriding that voice and giving away your power to someone else.
Mic drop. Any area of your life, no matter if they wear white coats or not.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
So I sometimes I suffer from what I feel is chronic fatigue. I just feel tired all the time. What will be your advice for me?
Okay, several things. One, I would look at your thyroid. That's often a culprit, and you want to do a deeper thyroid test, and not just a basic thyroid panel, but you want to look at even things like reverse T3 T4 ratio, all these kinds of things.
Where do you do those?
Well, one, you can work through your doctor, but ultimately you can go through Quest or like one of these labs.
Okay.
Another thing to look at is anemia, which has a potential, especially with women.
I'm a little bit anemic. It's called thalassemia, where it's genetic, but usually it doesn't affect me.
Okay, so some things to look at there are iron, obviously copper, B12, folic acid. You want to look at those.
What is copper toxicity?
I mean, yeah, any type of metal, you can have too much of, but certainly when you don't have enough, you could be anemic in this case. And usually, like zinc depletes copper and vice versa. So, also from there, I would look at obviously sleep quality. There are people that are getting plenty of sleep, but it may not be quality sleep. You may not be getting deep, restful sleep. And this can often happen. This is especially true with men, and especially if you're overweight, if you sleep on your back, if you're drinking before bed. These kinds of things can lead to like sleep apnea. And sleep apnea is very dangerous. It's not just snoring, but it's everyone might have like a that kind of thing. That's okay, but when it's like that kind of stuff, that's apnea, and it's very dangerous because you're going periods of time.
You know, I started sleeping on my back because I went to this I saw this YouTube video about this lady, and she completely changed her jawline by stopping sleeping on her sides. And now I'm sleeping on my back. I'm training myself to sleep on my back, and it's not that comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. And that jawline and your nasal pathways play a huge role in how much air you're able to take up and how you're breathing. And as we're chewing less in these generations, we're getting more and more narrow jawlines, and our nasal pathways are getting more and more restricted. Our face is kind of less round and wide in general, and it's getting more narrow. So that is actually a great point. But yes, absolutely looking at your sleep quality, making sure you don't have sleep apnea. You can do a sleep study, certainly asking a spouse if you're kind of skipping, if you're out of rhythm, if you're gagging, coughing, those kinds of things. It can be really dangerous. It can lead to heart attack and stroke.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yes. You literally, it's a reason that many people die. Is sleep apnea is kind of the precursor to a lot of things. So that's certainly something to look at. And then other things like just in the environment, like dander, dust, mold, all of these things. Like if you wake up and you're kind of red eyed and you feel inflamed, it can be the sleep apnea. It can also be things in the environment that are allergenic triggers. So those are some things to look at. And then also, I would go down the path of supercharging your mitochondria. And so that's where I would do some things like supplement wise, I would take PQQ and CoQ10.
Okay.
These are great to support the mitochondria. Also, polyphenols can inhibit the enzyme that breaks down NAD.
Are they called fully polyphenol?
Polyphenols, yeah.
That's what the supplement called?
No, I'll get into which ones they are. But those inhibit the breakdown of NAD, which is important to make ATP on the mitochondrial level. So we want some of the great ones are quercetin, fisetin, and apigenin. So those are all wonderful ones to get. And then from there, I like taking niacin or NMN. Those are both going to boost NAD levels. Also, you can just get an IV of NAD. It's quite expensive and it doesn't feel that great. You tend to get nauseous over the hour or two that it takes.
Sounds fantastic. Expensive and nauseous together.
Yeah, exactly. So those are some things that I would look at. And then there's a really interesting new vitamin. It's going to potentially be a new vitamin. We don't make it, it's found in the diet. There's a deficiency when you don't take it. So it could be the next new vitamin. It's being researched as such, and it's called ergothioneine. And ergothioneine protects the mitochondria. And maybe the last one that I would say is spermidine. This is another new one in anti aging. And yes, I am saying spermidine. Yes, people always ask. Yes, it is in sperm. So I'll get that out of the way.
Wait, they extract it from sperm?
No, but it is present in sperm. That's where they first found it. So it actually is found. It can either be made synthetically or it can be found in wheat germ. And spermidine actually is a mimic for fasting and increases autophagy. And autophagy is that cellular detox and cleanup. So that's really, really cool. So those are some ones that I would look at. And then certainly trying fasting, the ketogenic diet, and a paleo diet, like cleaning up your diet, getting rid of those allergenic triggers, getting on a low carbohydrate diet. If you're metabolically dysfunctional, can really feel like it's turning the lights on. And then fasting will augment that ketogenic diet and help with the autophagy portion, that detoxing and cleanup of your cells.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for all those amazing tips, and I'll check out those supplements. This was fantastic, and I feel like I need at least 10 more hours with you just to learn a little bit more.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do a journey together.
Where can people find you and get your book and learn from you?
Yes. My book is The Energy Formula, and it's at energyformula.com. And you can find me at Shawn Wells, ShawnWellS. So Shawn Wells on pretty much all the social media. So just at Shawn Wells. And I have a lot of great content on like Instagram with videos breaking down anti-aging stacks, depression stacks, ADHD stacks, you name it. And certainly looking at diet and biohacking devices and all the cool things. So,
Fantastic. Sean, thank you so, so much. I really appreciate you.
yeah, thank you for having me on.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Remember to take care of yourself. Change your diet if you're feeling inflamed. Take all the supplements that were mentioned on this podcast, and it's all going to be on the show notes. And have a beautiful day, night, wherever you are. This is Orion. Till next time.